Welcome to Dissecting Dahmer Part 4. This is the Hellbound Podcast. I'm Vicky.
Hi, and I'm Alex. I'm the founder of the Hellbound Horror Festival and also the host of this podcast. Michael is, I was going to say no longer with us. That's not true. Michael's not with us today because he's got his busy acting schedule and we've got to respect that. But he will endeavour to be back soon, and so I'm joined by my amazing wife Vicky.
Again, you'll all be fed up with me soon.
I know, yeah.
It's fine, we haven't got long.
We live in the same house, so we can record whenever we want.
Well, yeah. And we decide to do it at the most ridiculous times. Dad's going to come in at any moment, the dog's going to go wild, I'll have to stop mid-thought, but... Yeah,
because we're building a fence currently, so we're
continuing
to build our fortress of solitude.
Yeah, that's right. So this episode, we're talking episode 7, it's called Cassandra. In this episode we'll be doing 7 and 8. 8 is called Lionel. Are you ready to talk about it?
I certainly am, Vic.
So Cassandra, and you're a bit northern, aren't you? So you would say Cassandra.
Yeah, I'd probably say Cassandra.
Yeah, well, I say Cassandra. Potato. So it starts off the episode in the hallway at the beginning of the final survivor running out of his flat, of Dahmer's flat. So it kind of goes right back to the beginning. And it's all about the neighbour's perspective. So her name is Glenda Cleveland.
Yes.
And it's not until the end that I actually have to look up why the episode's called Cassandra. I'll reveal all at the end.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was like, where's the name? Is it her real name? Yeah, it was a strange one, but yeah.
It was. But it makes sense at the end.
Yeah.
Again, it's all yellow tones.
Yeah, it's the sodium street lights, and it's kind of a classic thing, and now it's kind of fading out because of LEDs. So when you watch a movie from now, like back in time, street light spills through blinds in rooms, and it's like a yellowy tone. So it's called sodium lighting.
But it looks 70s, even though it's 90s.
It's because sodium lighting was so kind of prevalent in that decade of movies, and yeah, if you want to see a great sodium lighting, look at 70s movies. That's very niche and inside baseball. So
Glenda is the neighbour, and we saw already how she was kind of a bit, I suppose, tortured by the sounds that she heard, but she saw the last survivor, so the survivor running out of Jeffrey's flat.
That's right.
And then decides to call the police. Called the police, but she saw that they were already outside, so she looked through the window, saw that they were already there. Now, apparently, this whole episode goes backwards and forwards quite a lot in her story and her involvement within this tale.
That's right, yeah.
So she had been calling the police for months. When they arrived, she said, y'all came too late. Like, she'd been calling them and reporting, but nobody ever came. She put the radio on, she heard that there were up to 15 bodies, and all the skull holes and, the trophies, were the IDs that he'd kept.
Yeah.
So only after he had been, I suppose, outed and all his crimes had been documented to a certain degree, did she find out the horrors of what she'd been listening to.
I know, I can't imagine how that feels, and one of the points I think they highlight this again is after he gets arrested, or maybe the day after, they say that the entire building's a crime scene, so being told to get out as well.
Yeah.
So she can't even leave where she is. Understandably, in this show, because I've heard differing things that she actually lives slightly further away in the building in real life, but in the show, she lives next door. She shares an air vent with him. So I can understand why the police are telling her especially to get out, but it goes against... There's no respect for her. There's no respect for
she's
listening.
A victim too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just really disturbing to see it from her perspective. She did a press interview, and obviously you can see her distress, and then you see her at work. So she's like some kind of admin or data processor, and her boss comes to her and says that clients are concerned about her, and seeing her crying all the time.
There's very little sympathy for her based on the other case. It's awful.
Yeah, it's
Can't
like
imagine this happening.
business is suffering because of you and your trauma. You know, sort it out, sort of thing. That's how it felt. She just felt the complete pressure of the situation. You know, in the press, they're calling the victims zombies.
Yeah. That's what her supervisor said to her. Did you see any of the zombies?
That's it. So, you know, she's being told to kind of relive it again and again. Like,
was the term zombie? I don't know this, but is it based on him effectively doing lobotomies on them?
Yeah, and like they were walking around with holes in their heads. And, like, you know.
Oh God.
So you see her and her struggles and how alone she feels, I think, within that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it cuts to Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
In the car, in a limo. He's going somewhere, travelling somewhere. And he talks about the Central Park 5 at that time. And it's like a metaphor for social injustices, like these crimes that are happening. He feels, you know, he needs to represent the voice of the victims and in fact, Glenda as well. You know, he is an advocate.
Yeah.
You know, you then jump back in time to when Jeffrey was committing these crimes, and are you happy for me just to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, committing these crimes, and you know, she's Glenda's in her apartment, and she can hear the sounds. She sees like him dumping things in the bins, screaming from the apartment. She can hear things from the vent.
Basically, she's seen and heard everything apart from being in the room. She's heard it all. She's seen it all. And for anyone not to believe this woman, especially with what she's telling them, so she's not like spinning a yarn.
Yeah.
She's being very clear, being very honest.
Yeah.
And it's basically a real social commentary on how black people aren't listened to, how they're being ignored, and especially when that kid gets brought back by the police, they just don't listen to her. And
like even the first scream that she hears, she calls the police, and don't they say to her like, "Have you gone and knocked on the door?"
Absolutely.
Well, I'm not going to knock on the door.
Yeah.
Like, are you crazy?
They're very lazy. Those coppers in this film, very lazy.
I find it difficult to fathom. Like, I've never actually had to call the police for anything. I've worked with the police, and you know, in that respect, but I've never had to call the police to report a traumatic event like this.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what it must have felt like for months and months and months to be calling and calling and calling and no one hearing you.
Yeah.
How isolating. Her daughter moved out and starts living with her boyfriend. Like, she's on her own.
Yeah.
Being tortured by the sounds. You know, Dahmer is like Frankenstein.
Yeah.
You know, what he does to his victims is a hobby. It's just so strange. You also see another guy that's in the apartment block, Dean, who moves in.
Oh my God!
And
yeah,
then Jeff,
absolutely, yeah.
You know, befriends him.
But this is the thing. What's her character called? Glenda knows Dean, so it brings it home even more so.
Well, then she calls the police and she's like, you know, I've not seen him for a while. Oh, they don't do anything. And then she sees that his mail is piling up downstairs in the box. Then she gets in touch with the supervisor person, the landlord. And, you know, she's like, smell this smell. Like, can you not smell what's going on here? And the day that Jeffrey got fired is also the day that he got an eviction notice. Yeah. Now, again, this timeline thing in this series, it goes backwards and forwards within episodes. You don't kind of know what time within chronologically it is. But it must be after Tony, I think, because he's just so drunk. He's like properly falling apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a really tense interaction between Jeff and Glenda with that sandwich.
Oh, it's
all the close-ups.
It basically doesn't. It makes you not want to eat. It's an amazing scene. He basically he says he's made her a turkey sandwich, or made her a sandwich, And it's the way it's shot. It's the way it's directed. It's one of probably my favourite scene in the whole show so far. The way that kind of plays out. It's really simple. The use of close-ups, just everything about cinematography is beautiful.
It is.
And then, aren't you going to eat your sandwich? It really is chilling. I can't remember the reasoning why she stops or she just leaves.
Because she just doesn't believe him. Well, she was told to move out, wasn't she? Yeah. After that, because I think it was very soon after that. That was the last victim, the survivor. Yeah. But that night, you can hear. I think it's that night, but you can hear the torturous sounds, the drilling, the no police help, the smells, the no sleep, the sounds of the Polaroid. You know, it's like a montage of all... This whole episode is a montage of all the trauma that she experiences and how that must stay with you for the rest of your life.
She's fully immersed in this sensory overload.
She's a victim too.
Yeah.
She's a victim.
Yeah, absolutely.
By proxy.
Yeah.
And she's living with that forever.
And she finally gets to speak to someone that wants to listen to her in this episode.
Well, that's it. So she ends up going into a motel. This is the point where you go forward in time to after she's been told to vacate the apartment.
Block, yeah.
And she's in like a motel, and Reverend Jackson knocks on her door.
Yeah.
And she's like, of course I know who you are. And then he goes to listen to her story and backs her and supports her and, you know...
He gets told the whole story.
Trusts what she's saying.
Yeah.
And she wasn't trusted and believed or backed for this so long.
Exactly, yeah. She's in a lonely little motel room and she sits down on the bed and she sits down on the bed and he sits down on a little chair next to the door. And then it flashbacks and then it goes back and forth and then you cut back to someone's listened to the entire story.
Yeah.
This is the first time in her life in regards to Dahmer that someone's just sat there and actually listened to her.
I know.
There's nothing worse than not being listened to.
There really isn't anything worse than being listened to. And, you know, let's wrap it up by saying that the reason that this episode is called Cassandra is in Greek mythology. Cassandra was a Trojan priestess dedicated to the god Apollo and fated by him to utter true prophecies but never to be believed.
Wow.
So she was someone in Greek mythology that was never believed. So episode 8 is called Lionel. Who's Lionel, Alex?
Lionel is the father of Jeffrey Dahmer, and he's played by the amazing actor Richard Jenkins.
6 Feet Under?
6 Feet Under, Shape of Water, Killing Them Softly. Absolutely everything he's in, he's just never phoned it in. Brilliant actor.
Very good. So he plays...
Lionel Dahmer, the father of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Very good, and he plays him very, very well.
Yeah.
We've seen him quite a few in different episodes, obviously, leading up to this. But this episode is about him, and it starts after the police interview with him crying.
And possibly the best cut back to now in the show ever, because you've had... How many episodes before this?
This is episode 8.
So you've had 7 episodes of back and forth, and the Dahmers, and killing people and all this. And this is the point where you feel as though you're back on track with the timeline, and it's all at the point where he's heard everything that Dahmer has done, and it's just a wonderfully acted moment. You know, when it cuts back to him, that close up.
It also starts off, I think, with from what I remember, with Jeffrey saying, "I guess I really done it now this time, Dad. Yeah. Hey, Dad," like that kind of shit. I've really fucked up, Dad.
Yeah, and.
I've really done it now.
Yeah, he's full, like, not shut down, but he's so... I didn't realise how open, because I'd never listened to the tape recordings, if there is any of him, how open he was about what he did.
Well, he wanted to see him, didn't he? So they actually spoke together, and, you know, he did say previously that he thought he was sick or ill and suggested therapy. And, you know, he's saying it all started with the raccoon under the house. Like, is that how it started? You know, I knew I shouldn't have done roadkill taxidermy with you.
The dad didn't.
He was blaming himself, wasn't he? Which shows how earnest he is to some degree. You know, as a parent, surely you do feel responsible. As an ethical parent, you would feel responsible slightly for it. And
well, maybe taxidermy was more of a normal hobby in the 30s and 40s and 50s when the dad was growing up. Oh, I know, absolutely. But maybe it was more commonplace then. I don't know, but it's a the dad he reacted so poorly to that, didn't he?
Yeah, and then he was saying, you know, well, it was your mother. She was taking sleeping pills and seizure medications when she was pregnant, and you know, Lionel was blaming the mum for leaving. Like he's just like road mapping, isn't he? Like the traumatic events or the events that would lead up to somebody being like this. You know, outside looking in when he's a major part of it. You know, he also
absolutely
left Jeffrey, didn't he? Really?
Yeah.
Lionel used to make explosives. He was saying, didn't he? I used to make explosives and take them to school, and he had fantasies like Jeff, but not really. He had fantasies hurting everyone else, like everyone else did, about hurting people or killing someone. Like a lot of people have those, you know.
Oh, I have them every day.
Oh, I have them quite often. Well, funny story. Probably not a funny story, but when I was working in fingerprints, there was one point where you got these little magnifying glasses that you look at the actual temp-prints.
Yeah.
And I remember walking down like it was a very small bureau, quite a small place. It was about 6 or 7 people on their desks, and I hadn't imagined walking past them and bashing their heads down onto these like glass things. And they would impale them, and that was at work, for God's sake.
That's like that thing though when you step on the edge of a cliff, isn't it? It's almost like you live it out just for a split second.
Well, no, but it's one thing to live out your own fantasies of hurting yourself, and then quite another to think about hurting somebody else.
Yeah, that's true.
Like grabbing this bat and smashing you over the head, and like the impact that it would have in your skull.
Especially one of the bats in here.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But that it's normal, is it? Everyone has those kind of thoughts, don't they?
I'm not sure if it is.
It might be, surely.
Let's move on.
In effect, he was massively overthinking, as anyone would.
Well, the dad was trying to find reason for Jeffrey being Jeffrey. Like, is it because I had these fantasies, and he was so torn, Lionel, Jeffrey's dad, about where this started, and I can't imagine what the position would be like if you're the father or parent or brother or sister of a serial killer. Maybe everyone does start thinking, am I part of this? Am I part of the reason?
Well, let's not beat around the bush. He wasn't there. He was absent for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jeffrey was very much alone. Very much alone, left to do his own devices, to do what he wants to, from the age of, was it 14, 15?
That's right, yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
So, you know, come on, Lionel.
Yeah.
You're going to have these questions because you weren't there.
Yeah, and
I'd know if you were gone off for, like, hours on end. I would question what you did within that time.
I think you'd start questioning it if I started thinking of dead bodies, yeah.
Well, especially if the house... If this study or office of yours smelt more than it actually does, I would question... It
smells beautiful in this room.
It does, actually, fair dues. You cleaned for me, thank you.
I cleaned for my wife.
Anyway, in the episode, it flashes back to the grandma's house.
Oh, my God.
Because it's turned upside down. She's got
police.
dementia at this point as well.
Yeah. I was wondering what it was going to be like, and I didn't know she had dementia. And it's not a saving grace. It's not. I never want to have it. I don't want anyone else to have dementia. But one small thing is, she doesn't really contemplate what's happening.
God knows what she's thinking.
And if she did, she'd probably die if she understood what was happening, especially in that basement.
I don't think you'd be able to take it in.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Dad Lionel is looking at a lot of the news, the interviews, the headlines, trauma, just trauma.
And there's like personal attacks on him as well.
You know, personally, I think maybe he knew what he was doing, that he wasn't insane. He potentially had a bit of a death wish, like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
He just didn't want to be there, so his compulsions and his drinking just took over, and he didn't see a reason for not doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Ed Gein, a prime example, he was absolutely insane. Dahmer was able to integrate within society a little bit more while he was working, potentially. Going out at night. The nightclub scene. Like, you're off your face, you can do what you want. Like, it's very accepting, especially...
Outside of all the murder and the cannibalism and all of that, the nightclub scene seemed pretty fun.
It's in this episode as well that the mum comes back. Is that right? Joyce Flint.
That's right,
on the door, apologising.
Yeah. She's looking for not sympathy from one of the victims' families.
The impact statements in this as well. So you've got the court case, haven't you? Is that right? Or
that's right. It's the court case.
The impact statements of the parents and
friends and family of victims.
I think is there a poem in the victim's voice as well? The siblings. You've got, you know, it's just awful. It's horrible. It's really hard to talk about. Really.
We have to just get through it now, don't we? That's how it feels.
Oh yeah. Did Jeffrey do a statement? I can't remember.
I think he spoke. I can't quite remember what he said. But yeah, he's done now, isn't he?
But he got 15 consecutive life sentences.
Yeah, because there's no. What state is it in? Michigan. It's Michigan, isn't it? So there's no kind of death penalty there at the time.
You've got at the end of the episode, you've got Lionel who apologises, blames himself for leaving him alone. You know, a lot of that remorse and regret, which is palpable.
Yeah.
But you've also got Joyce, the mum, tried to kill herself as well.
Yeah.
So the parents really... The whole episode is dedicated really to Lionel more than Joyce. Joyce is in it. Maybe Joyce is next. Don't know.
Or maybe it's because the father's seen as a bigger influence on Jeffrey's life. That's possibly why. Yeah.
It's just these two episodes, so both 7 and 8, really delve into the victim feeling and sentiment of those people around Jeffrey.
Yeah.
The neighbour, the parents, the victims' families.
Yeah, exactly.
The survivors.
The extended range of victims and people he's had this knock-on effect on, which is easily passed down generational as well.
Oh, definitely. And it's going to be there for forever.
So, next week...
It's the last two.
It's the last two episodes, episode 9 and 10 of Dahmer.
Dissecting Dahmer. No, Dahmer. Murder. The Jeffrey Dahmer Story.
No, isn't it? It's not murder, is it? It's what we're discussing now. Well, what I'm mumbling over is the title of Netflix's show is a bit long-winded. I think it's called Dahmer Monster: A Jeffrey Dahmer Story.
Well,
hey!
Huzzah!
Ooh, you got nice soft hands. So yeah, we're delving deep and dissecting Dahmer next week for our final episode. And then what I think Vic and I are going to be doing is seasonal horror films. So I think for December, Michael and I... I'm roping my wife into loads more stuff. I'm shooting more stuff. So yeah.
What did we watch recently?
We watched all the Home Alones.
Oh, God, yeah.
No, we watched Smile.
Oh,
big new horror film, and I think the one we really preferred, and I think it's one of the best films of the year personally, is Barbarian. And we're definitely going to delve deep into that.
Delve deep into dissecting.
Very, very deep.
Death.
All right, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. See you next time for Dissecting Dahmer Part 5, the finale.